Okay, welcome everybody to yet another very exciting, our LinkedIn series. We have most amazing lineup today, highly, respected, celebrated with authority when it comes to really looking at the India 2047 and the India story opportunity. Just a quick background: we've been doing this for the last 4 years. Really, on X, we've run multiple X spaces, bringing together ministers, multilateral authorities, leaders, CEOs and others to really look at the India 2047 story, which is India's incremental journey to look at the world in the year 2047. And the whole, I think the calculations by multiple leaders, including Professor Subramaniam Krishnamurthy, is for India to really go between 35 trillion to 50 trillion by the year 2047. So I think it's in that very much on the 15th of this year, on 15th August, we decided to do this on LinkedIn, mainly because we wanted to reach out to policymakers, VC founders, but also professionals who really look at India's story as a rising opportunity. And for many of us who come from from Bharat or India, we know that this is not new to us. About 300 years ago, India was leading the world economy. So today we have a very, very important, panel and panelists. But before I do that, let me also welcome my co-host, Shubham, who's the founder of StartoPreneur. And of course, this is an intergenerational panel. You can do that. Shubham, if you want to just say a few words, and then we'll welcome our amazing panelists.
All right, thank you. Good morning and good evening, everyone who have joined, from India and US as well, and across the world. Thank you, Professor Michael, CDR Kaushik, Gopal, Navneet Kaushik sir, Kartik Gopal sir. Uh, I'm a founder and CEO of StartoPreneur. We are a venture studio as well as IP advisory firm for the companies based in India as well as in US. Uh, we've invested in companies which are in the healthcare domain specifically, and we're working with them from the 0 to 1 stage right now. Uh, Also, we work with the startups which are sort of which are at a growth stage, and beyond that, we help them, get in the international markets. So right now, we're working with startups which are expanding their operations in US right now. In past, we have worked with startups who wanted to expand into the European markets. Uh, it's That's all about Startupreneur. Thank you. Over to you, Ravi. Sir. Thank you.
I think, thank you very much. Shubham, you will also do an introduction of our panelists, but just to say a few words, I think just to confirm that we are live on LinkedIn. I've got confirmation because there are many listeners. We had a very strong, confirmation about almost 200 people, but also our YouTube channel has a lot of replays. We are live on our X as we speak right now. We're also live on our Startupreneur Instagram. So this is a multi-channel, almost like a webinar, which is going as we speak right now across the board. I think Suman, one of our colleagues who wants to be on the background, he is the really the technical brain behind really making sure everything works very smoothly. Thank you so much, Suman, for always being supporting the Bharat story, the India story. We're very, very grateful to you. I think today, as you know, that we have a very important panel. I know, of course, Michael, Professor Kugelman needs no introduction, but he's been an authority in South Asia, but particularly in India. And I would really like him to say a few words as introduction about himself before we get into India. So, Michael, over to you, please.
Oh, thanks a lot, Ravi. It's really great to be here with you all today. So I've been an observer and an analyst of India and the region for nearly 20 years. Actually, it has been 20 years. And that's included, among other things, time as the head of the South Asia work at the Wilson Center think tank, as well as serving as a political risk analyst and a consultant. And very recently, I've been taking a very close look at the renewable sector in India, which I think, as we can all agree, is one of the numerous new growth sectors to look at in India. It's really fascinating. So really great to be here with you all today.
And I'm sure all of you know Michael from all his writing across different mediums, definitely foreign policy. So we will dive into today really from the about a historical perspective of how a U.S. policy vis-a-vis India has evolved, and it's evolving as we speak right now, including today's decision of the H-1B and many other discussions. But we will remain apolitical and really look at from a neutral perspective, from an opportunity perspective. And I'm going to let my young co-host really do the introduction of my dear, most respected Commander Navneet Kaushik ji and most respected Commander Kartik Gopal ji. So, Shubham, please.
Thank you. Uh, it's my pleasure to introduce Professor. Sorry, my bad. It's my pleasure. It's my honor to introduce Dr. CDR Namneet Kaushik, who's a founder of a Jamwant venture, a distinguished commander from the Indian Navy with 26 years of experience. He brings unparalleled expertise in technology, commercialization, and acquisition management, as well as in a global collaborations. He has not only led a cross-functional team in one of the most challenging environments, but also closely worked with international partners across Europe, Asia, and US. His experience is in guiding Indian startups through global innovation program, including Boston, reflects his, including at the Boston, which reflects his commitment of bridging the gap between India's innovation with the world. Uh, Today, as the leader of Jamwant Ventures, he continues that mission, helping scale indigenous technologies, fostering partnership that strengthen the both industry as well as geopolitics. We are privileged to have you with us today, sir. Thank you for joining. Uh, we have. Oh, just give me a minute. Something is wrong with my screen.
Thank you very much, Shubham. Maybe a few
Sorry.
words from you, sir, before we do the other introduction. Please, if you can
Yes.
unmute and say a few words.
Hello.
Yeah, Shubham, we can hear you. Everything's fine.
Oh, okay. So we have with us, Kartik Gopal sir, who's a co-founder of Jamwant Ventures. His experience is well taken care by, you know, over the years of his experience, his entire experience led into working with startups as well as as a Navy commander. I'm sorry for the introduction not being very well written with me, sir. I request you to please give us a brief about your journey, and sorry for that.
Not at all. Actually, it's a difficult one to actually assimilate what we have done, as in our lives. We never thought we'll be here in the venture ecosystem, going with the startups, talking to the financial sector, because we come from a background of defense, which was like we joined NDA at the age of 18. Then we have served for more than 20 years, did various assignments. But luckily, within the Navy, the different assignments which came across our ways were the ones which are actually preparing us for this India moment, which is there right now. Right, India today is a very young country, young demography, you know, and we come with an experience of like I have an experience, working experience of more than 26 years, and this experience I had done. I have a BTech mechanical, masters from IIT Kharagpur, and this is all called in the Navy, right? And projects, I've done project management around 400 crores revenue. Then I've done 50,000 crores worth defense acquisitions, then DGQA, and then my last appointment, which actually got me thinking and starting my own venture fund, was a organization called Technology Development Board, which is a Ministry of Science and Technology's autonomous body, from where we used to invest in startups and companies for innovative indigenous technologies. So that's a brief introduction of what I did over last 26 years. And Kartik sir will have his own, what you can say, experience to share. He has much more experience than what I have.
Yeah, I mean, just to give some numbers for Kartik ji, he's done $1 billion worth of procurement under him in his different avatars, and he is regarded and respected with all the work that he's been done within the Navy, but across the industry. So I know that you're very humble, Kartik ji, but definitely please just say a few words, and then we'll get started.
Thank you, Ravi, for this opportunity. Good morning, good evening, everyone. Yeah, the journey has been somewhat similar to what Navneet has done. Only thing he has been in the technical field and I have been predominantly in the logistic field. The numbers are numbers, but at the end, it is what you do on the ground that matters. So yes, like Navneet said, never dreamt that I'll be part of a venture fund. Yeah, I also don't know how we landed up here, but by our experience and with what Navy has imbibed in us, I think we will be able to do much better than what we are doing today. With our aim being to hold up and bring up startups, like the name of venture fund says, Jamwant Ventures. So we hope that we'll be the Jamwant for many of the Hanumans that are floating around in our country. That's in short. Over to you, Ravi.
I think thank you very much. I think we will talk about the India story and some of the amazing, data points that India has seen over the last, 15 years, especially in this new governance. We've seen a very strong focus on technical education, as Commander Navneet was talking about, the increase in IITs, the IIMs. We've seen very strongly the health sector booming from about 10 years ago, from 7 to 23. We're looking at social delivery, sanitation. Just look at those numbers. 120 million households provided toilets, tap water, drinking water. That's another thing we are connected with. Connected to is air water generation, and we'll probably talk about that. The Ayushman Bharat reaches out to 550 million. I mean, look at those numbers. We're looking at these huge numbers of a country, and of course, we have the housing pay with about 37 million homes. We're looking at rural housing, another very strong number, about almost close to 30 million. We're looking at highways. The highways in India is marching ahead when 146, 204,000 kilometers by March 2025. We're looking at electrification of the railway close to 98%. And Michael did talk about the renewable energy and energy sector, and we will probably talk about the solar alliance and the bio alliance and the ethanol and the whole focus on EVs that India's very much marching ahead. We looked at a very strong growth. In 2014, we just had 74 airports. And now in 2024, it's 159. I mean, look at the way the growth is happening. The infrastructure is developing. You're looking at UPI with 20 billion transactions in a single month, with a value of 283 billion. We're looking at loans at 520 million. That is the India story. And the list goes on science and technology. I mean, look at the way we've looked at the EV mission that was launched, which accelerated the R&D in the EV sector. And similarly, on security, I think we've seen the recent conflict between India and Pakistan really brought to the world's attention. And that's why we have Commander Kartik and Commander Navneet talking about the defense tech opportunity, how Made in India is changing the way the world's defense sectors are kind of moving forward. So these are some snapshots, and we will dive into really over to you, Michael, really from the policy perspective. And you've been watching South Asia, you're watching your own economy, and we've seen often India. People are talking about decoupling from China, but India's story is India's story. It's not going to replicate or copy any other story. So, if you could really, in the next few minutes, talk from your perspective, what is the India story? And I would ask the same question to honorable commanders, the same. What is the India story from your perspective? Over to you, Michael, and then we'll come to Commander Navneet and Commander Kartik. Michael.
Yeah, thanks again. For me, we all have our stories to share about India's story. For me, that really makes one think about the strength of India's economy. And one I'll briefly share anecdotally is from Davos. So I attended Davos for the first time this year in January. And what struck me was just how present India was at Davos, not just in terms of the large number of Indian delegates and speakers and media and so on, but more so the dominant presence of India Inc. at Davos. I remember walking down the main promenade at Davos one day, the area that the public can access, because I'm not important enough to have access to the restricted areas. Anyway, walking down the main promenade, I was struck by all of the Indian tech companies with their pavilions. Most of the tech companies present at Davos with their big pavilions and all were American companies. And the only others, so far as I remember, were Indian companies. There were just so many of them, which I think is such a powerful reflection of how far India has come, so to speak. And another thing that I was struck by was that most countries had, their own pavilions at Davos, but India had pavilions for specific states, which I think is a reflection of how much global economic clout that individual Indian states have. There was a Uttar Pradesh pavilion. There were several other state pavilions as well. And, they were real crowded. There was a lot of interest. So I thought that was just, really very interesting. But that said, I'm not an economist. I'm not a finance guy. So I'll just take a few minutes to lay out my geopolitical perspective on India and where things stand now, particularly in terms of U.S. India relations. We have to acknowledge that there is a crisis now in the relationship. But I think we have to remember that this relationship has had its moments over the years, right? It's had its share of rocky moments, even over the last 20 years of strategic partnership. There's several examples one could point to, whether you want to talk about the Cobra affair more than a decade ago, or the very slow U.S. response to India's second COVID wave back in 2021. And, if you look at the history of U.S.-India relations going way back, there have been ups, there have been a lot of downs as well. One could argue the immediate few years after independence for post-colonial India, there wasn't much to U.S.-India relations. It wasn't really until the late 50s and early 60s when the relationship really enjoyed its first real period of warmth. But then, of course, came 71, the 71 war, U.S. support for Pakistan, and then came India's friendship treaty with the Soviet Union. You had 2 decades of pretty cold bilateral ties before things started to really improve in the 90s and then really pick up in the early 2000s, bringing us to the current period of strategic partnership. So my point is that the U.S. and India have had their share of troubles, but they've tended to bounce back, which I think for optimists would suggest things are bound to look up at some point. But at the same time, I think we really need to acknowledge that what our 2 countries are going through now, it's a particularly tough moment. I think it's a multifaceted partnership that's facing a multifaceted crisis. I mean, we know that commercial relations have been very much in the news because of the tariffs, but there are concerns on the people-to-people side because of U.S. policy changes and potential changes on visas and immigration. The strategic soundness of the relationship has been called into question, with both the U.S. and India signaling a desire to ease tensions with China, and also the trust factor. My understanding is that the U.S. has lost a fair amount of trust in New Delhi. So this is going to take some time. And what also strikes me is that India has seemingly done everything right to keep the relationship on track, right? We all recall that Prime Minister Modi was one of the first leaders to meet with President Trump after he came back for his second term. We had a number of concessions that New Delhi made to the Trump administration early on, reducing, in some cases, eliminating tariffs, taking back dozens of undocumented Indian workers, making more concessions in trade talks with the US. And if you go back over the last few years and look at the figures, India can seemingly check off all the boxes. So India boosted its imports from America by $3 billion in recent years. Crude oil has been India's top commodity import from the US since 2019 in terms of value. India has also invested $40 billion in the US in recent years, which has generated nearly 500,000 American jobs. So India has been buying America, investing in America at rising levels for several years. And yet we look at where things are now. Just shift very briefly for some thoughts on US-India economic relations. It's such an important component of the partnership. And, it seems that in recent years, there's been so much talk about strategic partnership, the China factor, Indo-Pacific, the Quad, India as a net security provider, all of that. But I'd argue that it's the commercial relationship that's perhaps been the most enduring and resilient aspect of the partnership over the last 20 years. Trade volumes have been growing exponentially for the most part over the last few decades. even when there have been some blips in the broader partnership. And if you go back to the origins of the current strategic partnership, it does not start with shared concerns about China, which happened just in the last decade. It does not start with shared concerns about terrorism that emerged in the years after 9/11. It actually starts, in my view, in the early 90s, when India, to avert a serious economic crisis, passed liberalization reforms that brought its economy more into the global economy. And I think if you talk about India's growth story, at least the modern reflection of that, it begins then, or the recent reflection of that, it begins then. That created a window for new US India trade pathways, like energy, for example. That was one of the first areas of cooperation for the US and India back then. So yeah, I think this begs the question, what can this critical commercial or economic relationship between the US and India do to insulate or shield itself from the crisis in the broader partnership? So, this past summer, I had the good fortune to attend a US India CEO forum in New York. And I know that several of you on this call were at that forum as well. I was struck by the level of enthusiasm and optimism among the corporate leaders from the US and India that were there about US India economic ties. At that time, everyone thought there'd be a US India trade deal. There was not, but I was still struck by how much the business communities in both cases want to continue to work together despite all the challenges. And there are some challenges. I mean, the U.S. tariffs, if they do come down, you can't help but think about the impact that that could have for India, given that the U.S. is India's top export destination, or one of them. You also have to look at the aforementioned possible changes to U.S. immigration visa policies. I think that's impossible to avoid. And I think also the fact that we've seen rising anti-India sentiment among some of the supporters of the current administration. The image of India in the United States, I would argue, is quite positive and has been for quite some time. So that's also an unfortunate thing that will need to be managed. But let me just end here on a positive note, because I know that we're talking about opportunity. I'm still optimistic that this relationship will pull through, and given that the commercial relationship is one of the most resilient pillars of the partnership, it should persevere. So I think that one useful approach might be for US investors to try to fill gaps and look at fast-growing sectors in India that will not necessarily be priorities for the Trump administration, and that would include something like clean energy. As I said earlier, I track the renewable sector in India very closely through my work at Horizon Engage. There's a lot of potential there, especially with this new push for developing green hydrogen in India. I believe the goal is to start producing green hydrogen by early next year. And also, we've seen a significant surge in EVs in the electric vehicle sector. This has really been very impressive in India. Um, the Indian government's provided a lot of incentives to clean energy investors. India itself has set a good example, for example, with efforts on the part of state-owned oil and gas companies to start using more green hydrogen in their activities. So I think there's no reason why there can't be forward movement in a space like that, despite all the challenges that I've mentioned. So thank you, and back to you, Ravi.
Well, thank you very much, Michael, and I absolutely spot on. I think I still remain extremely optimistic. I think we will move on the other side. And as you know, many of us who've been here for about 2 decades, we've seen the back and forth. And definitely from the way it was in February to way today on 20th September, it's a very different India-US relationship. And I think it will fluctuate but I still feel very strongly that it is the business community which will bring and both the countries together and really make a very clear distinction between the noise and focus on the signal, and that's the critical part. I think I have always maintained and said this from the day one. But having said that, I think India is a very, very different India in 2025. It's not the India of 2000 or 2010 or 2013. It's an India which is much more assertive. As you said, it's a young skilled worker. And the next sector that we're going to talk about is the defense sector. I mean, it is one of the biggest, importers. About, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the third or the fourth. The amount of money, and if somebody told me, my father served for the Indian Army. He served as a soldier. I was 14 when I lost him. For me, it is very interesting to see, and we have one of the most amazing two founders of, Jamwant. And if somebody said 10 years ago there were private VCs investing in defense tech in India, I was like, really? Why? And honestly, sirs, over to you to really tell us what is the India moment, Navneet ji and Kartik ji, from your perspective before we get into the other set of questions to what is the India moment to you, sir?
So actually, the India movement right now, I feel, is about the demographic change, that we are the youngest, what you can say, youngest demography right now, and with that, there's a lot of aspirations. A lot of things have changed. There's a lot of self belief which has started coming in, and there was a silent revolution for let's say last 5 years or so, 5 to 10 years, and then people have started coming out. The startups have started talking about it, like Michael was saying that the Indian diaspora is one of the most active in the startup ecosystem across the world right now. And one of the reasons that we came out is because, like in our times, the startups and all these kind of opportunities were not available. But one thing which we saw, the gap which was there right now, was someone who can tell them what is actual requirement. There's a lot of energy, and there's a lot of what you can say, a lot of things in flux, considering the geopolitics as well, like what Michael was trying to say, that you know there is a fluctuation in the Indo-US relationship, and actually there's a realignment across the world right now. So the things are in flux, but for the Indian story, I think this is the moment. We look inward. We have a lot of problems to solve, which we have done fairly well in last 10 years, and there's still a long way to go. But yes, we have started becoming self-reliant. Like what you rightly said, we are actually the fifth largest importer, but our importers in the defense part has reduced from 15% in over a decade now to 8.5%. So which is a substantial decrease. And exports have doubled, but I would not say exports have doubled means that's a huge number. It was zero point 0.1, which is of the global part, which has gone to zero point 0.2. There's still a long way to go, but Indian startups are coming up there. Indian industry is reaching out there. And of course, with Operation Sindoor, the credibility of the systems, what you can say, defense systems and the combat systems have increased, and probably that will open up new markets for us as well.
Thank you very much, sir. Over to you, Kartikji, to really tell us. I mean, you know the logistics and the procurement. You've seen the way it is kind of just blasted off into multiple areas. And if you could just tell us from your perspective, what is the India opportunity there and the India story? Over to you, sir.
You're on mute, sir.
Hi. Thank you, Ravi. To start with, yes, this is the moment that we have been waiting for decades now. We have been seeing how we have been in Navy, especially the Navy was divided into rather two kinds of fleet, whether it's the Eastern origin or the Western origin. From there, now we are coming to ships which are having almost 70% internationalization. That itself speaks volumes of what we have achieved in the past decade or so. And going ahead, we hope that we are interacting with the kind of founders that we are interacting with. They are amazing people, amazing thought, amazing clarity. And the beauty is today the government is saying, please invest in R&D. There's an R&D fund created. So yes, going ahead, I think we should be self-reliant maybe by 2047, which is not too far away. But as of now, yes, we are doing wonders, especially in the defense sector. And with the private partnership coming in and they being given, it is actually, except for hardcore military equipment like building ships or aircrafts and things of that sort, most of the places in the past decade, the private companies have come in and they've literally taken up the ownership of it. And they are far ahead of what the government backed PSUs are doing, especially with drones, AIs, and things of that sort. We are moving much ahead. And yes, very soon, I think we'll be catching up. Over to you, Ravi.
Thank you
So
very
even in
much.
the space
Again,
sector, actually, I'll just add on. In the space sector itself, like satellite, this thing, we are expected to have a growth at a 10% CAGR, which is going to be approximately 70 billion US dollars in 2030. And AI in defense is expected to grow at 33%. So which itself is going from 16 billion US dollars in the world economy to what you can say around 70 billion, which itself is a huge opportunity in India, considering that the AI drive which is currently being seen in the startup ecosystem in India. So there is a huge opportunity to invest in India right now.
absolutely. And I'm going to come back to my co-founder, Shubham, to share some data about what does the startup ecosystem look like? Where are these young entrepreneurs? So before I come to you, Shubham, I just want to go to Professor, Kugelman. So really, you talked about an important point where we are in 2025. It's not that the geopolitics is now different from the economic perspective. It's kind of amalgamated. It's a very different word because probably we are so connected, we are so informed. Everything has its, kind of implication on everything else. So it'll be interesting to hear your reflection of India's presence and handling of the multilateral and also geopolitical, I would say, systems and processes such as G20. I would give that to you to really say that, what did you think? How did India kind of use the G20 opportunity to really say that, let's look at a world which is strongly coming from the global south. Similarly, where are we on Quad? And more recently, much talked about is the India, Russia, and China meeting. And you know that there were lots of headlines. But it's definitely, if somebody told me in January this year that you'll see Xi Jinping, Putin, and Prime Minister Modi together, I would have said, no, that's not going to happen. Of course, I was proven absolutely wrong, including on my tweet. I tweeted something in April, and I was like, okay, I was wrong here. So over to you, really, to understand. And why is it important to understand those systems as we're looking at India's growth story as a potential, number two or number one economy by 2047? Over to you. You're on mute, sir.
Sorry about that. I was just saying that we all get things wrong every now and then, including me. But no, this is an important question. Yeah, I think that you're really articulating India's policy of strategic autonomy, which has guided its foreign policy for decades. And I think that it's faced a lot of tests in that regard. I mean, particularly when you had the U.S., pardon me, when you had the Russian invasion of Ukraine, that really, I think, reflected the significant challenge that India would have in balancing its ties with both Russia and the United States, but it's done so very well, or it had done so very well until its current challenge. But no, look, I mean, we know that India it prizes the idea of multipolarity and multilateralism, and that entails being a part of organizations that might be opposed to each other, right? In the sense that it's a big backer of the Quad, it's a big backer of the newer IMEC, which of course is this US-backed connectivity entity involving the Middle East and Europe and India and others. But at the same time, it continues to embrace the likes of BRICS and the SCO. And of course, it was an SCO summit where we had that aforementioned meeting between Modi, Putin, and Xi. The G20, I think, really encapsulates just how effective India is as a practitioner of strategic autonomy, in the sense that it's a part of the G20. And when it was chairing the G20 several years back, one of its big priorities, as you rightly note, was to essentially ensure that the global challenges that disproportionately affect the global South are taken into account within the G20, and particularly among the wealthier developed states within the G20. And yeah, I think the jury's still out to some degree as to how effective India has been at indeed being a voice for the global South. I mean, this is something that it's been trying to do. It's continued to do this since it chaired the G20. There is a geopolitical angle to this because China is also trying to cast itself as a voice of the global South. And I do think that China might have an advantage when it comes to trade links, economic links to Latin America, Africa. I think China is just more present there than India is, at least for now. But given where things are now with this unexpected crisis in U.S.-India relations, I do think that it could change the dynamic just a little bit. I mean, India was not about to abandon its membership of these groups that are counter the U.S., counter the West, like SCO and BRICS. But I do think that given the pressures it's facing from the U.S. tariffs, and given how troubled the U.S.-India relationship is, India might feel a bit more inclined to try to do a bit more with the likes of BRICS and SCO, and that could include throwing its weight behind more substantive efforts to actually develop economic mechanisms, such as a BRICS bank or an SCO bank, that would actually be meant to counter the dollar, not necessarily undercut it, but counter it. And this is the very fear that that President Trump has. He doesn't want any country to be doing anything that could counter the dollar. So, India, it clearly wants to ensure that its relationship with the U.S. Retains its or comes back to what it had been. But at the same time, it's going to feel more inclined to engage more with China, keeping in mind that India was pursuing a détente with China well before U.S.-India tensions set in, right? And it was about a year ago when you had a border deal between India and China to restore patrols, and then things have happened since then. But I think that economic motivations have prompted India to try to ease more tensions with China, particularly with the tariffs. India needs more market access, right? Given the losses that could come from the U.S. tariffs. It's trying to conclude an FTA with the EU by the end of the year. The EU is another top export destination for India. And it's also, I think, feels that it could benefit from more trade with China, which is already quite sizable. Bottom line, India is facing a pretty significant test and challenge for its strategic autonomy policy, but I still think it's holding things up quite well, all things considered.
Yeah, I just cannot agree more. I think it's doing pretty well, and I think definitely it's using the crisis and turning that into an opportunity. And I think that's been a fantastic strategy, completely from a foreign policy perspective, from an investment perspective, and others. So before I go to Commander Kartik and Navneet, I just want to go back to Shubham to
Yeah.
really give us some data points on what does the startup system look like in the last 10 years, and why the young entrepreneurs like you are looking at India with complete optimism.
All right, thank you. So I think the Indian ecosystem is evolving at a speed which we have never grasped in last 10 years. Since 2017, the government has launched Startup India initiative. We have seen not only in the startups that are coming in the play, but the ecosystem that government is trying to build around that, which is supporting incubators, supporting the research, like like Navneet ji said. Government is setting up a lot of different type of funds that includes Bayrak Nidhi, and to support all the each and every specific aspect of the ecosystem to evolve it. As of now, India is the third largest startup ecosystem of the world. But definitely it's definitely going to be in top two, or maybe it will come to second spot soon enough, given the all the geopolitics as well as different things that are happening. uh, Recently, Amitabh Kant ji, he yesterday he gave a statement that the entire new H1B policy is going to add innovation, or it will help foster the innovation in India. So I think I'm firm believer of that. Right now India stands at about more than 190,000 startups that are recognized under Startup India initiative. And if you see the bifurcation of all these startups, are heavily focused on deep tech as well as technology oriented startups are emerging, backed by defense tech as well as healthcare, and some of the very unique startups that are coming in the play. uh, Additionally, despite all the geopolitics as well as policies that are framing around the India, uh, recently there has been a setup of fund between India US alliances of approx $1 billion fund, which was set up to support the deep tech startups. I think behind all this noise, there is still a strong commitment that's happening towards fostering the innovation. uh,
Absolutely.
right. So I think over to you, Ravi. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Shubham. And I just wanted again, the data points are fantastic, right? You're looking at startups in AI and deep tech, and I actually was connected to both Commander Navneet and Commander Kartik through an amazing, a woman-led deep tech water startup based out of Chennai, which is doing air water generation. And who would have thought India would be leading on air water generation? And an amazing woman leader leading that, and that's brought three of us to really get to know each other. You're looking at amazing innovation in the space. And the list goes on. We know the fintech and amount of work that's happening. This morning I was in a conversation with another amazing fintech entrepreneur from Bangalore, health tech, meditech. I mean, Shubham, amazing work happening in diabetes through IIT Chennai, revolutionary technology development work happening, agri-tech and food tech. I mean, a lot of work and coming by wearing my agri-tech and food tech hat, the drones and the Kisan drones and the way it's changed the Indian agriculture sector is absolutely mind-boggling to a positive side. EdTech, e-commerce. I mean, we know about the way e-commerce, I think, is gone to another level. But definitely, I think the space tech and the defense tech that Commander Navneet talked about is a huge opportunity. I mean, not even looking at the logistics and mobility, Commander Kartik ji, that's kind of revolutionizing India as we know it. So I just want to dive down to Jamwant Ventures, and if you could really educate all our viewers and many of us who will probably go back and look at the recording to really tell us what is the Jamwant venture, what is the story, and why this is moving to the next level. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Ravi. So I'll just go back a bit on the what you can say the my last experience working with Technology Development Board, because that is where from where the Jamwant story actually started. So Technology Development Board is an autonomous body of Department of Science and Technology, and why I'm mentioning that right now is because I want to come to a point where once India comes into something, the world over prices of that commodity actually drops. Like while a lot of people may not know, Technology Development Board was funded the first vaccine which was made in India. That was a hepatitis B vaccine which was made by a company called Shanta Biotech, and the second company was Bharat Biotech. Now once we funded that company built the vaccine, and the world over price of that vaccine dropped from $23 a vial to $1 a vial, and that's actually something that made it affordable for everyone, right? So that's the kind of an impact that the Indians can make into an ecosystem when they get it, right? And that is where the Jaman story actually started. Once I saw that there's a huge amount of energy which is there in the ecosystem today in India, large number of startups, amazing young founders. But what happens is we are expecting that one young founder to know everything, because having a tech is one part, but running a company is another part. Having a supply chain, logistics experience to plan for the future, right? You're making one prototype. Now that one prototype, when you get into the market, you have to make it to at least 1,000, 10,000. You have to go global. You have to compete globally. And at that point of time, every penny matters. Every point of your design matters. So that kind of a experience, which is not available at an early stage, right? They love to design, they love to play. But at a certain point, when you're making a tech, you have to think at the price point. And that is how the Jamwant Ventures thought came in. So we are three co-founders. Commander Kartik, who like we introduced, he comes with a huge lot of experience in supply chain, logistics, inventory management, warehousing, ERP systems. And I come with experience of technology background. And from TDB, we used to evaluate companies for commercialization of indigenized tech. So that experience actually helped. Coming from project background, acquisition background, quality assurance, so we were able to see the gaps, and that is how we started investing. Right, we set up a company. My other co-founder is Dr. Jyotsna Dalal. She has a PhD, and she has worked in the energy sector. She has worked in what you can say the biotech sector. So three of us together thought about it. We said we need to do something, and we started this fund even before what you can say the Operation Sindoor was even started. Like we started in 23 when there was no one in the defense sector, right? We realized that this is the sector which requires a lot of what you can say boost, and there's a huge opportunity out there. Obviously, Operation Sindoor. After that, everybody's gung-ho about the sector, but we don't go by the trends. We go by the value which things create. The first company we invested, I think yesterday it was in the news that they have raised the next round of 42 crores. uh, we were the first checks into that, right? Because there are a lot of people who did not understand that a tech is a tech, and then it has use cases. And most of the techs which what you can say see today, like GPS, geospatial analytics, spray drying, right? All this came from the defense side. So all these technologies were developed for the defense, including internet, and then it came into the civil side, and then they have a huge application. So India movement have just started. It's a there are thousands of startups which are coming up, and now you will see in the next 5 years a huge amount of what you can say success stories. You will listen to them, and you will see how we can actually attract international market, we will be irresistible because we are also having a good price point, good talent pool, and of course, we had the right intentions.
Thank you so much, sir. Commander Kartik, and do you want to please comment?
Yeah, Navneet usually covers the macro points and leaves the micro to me. So what we at Jamwant do is we help them acquire or identify who their customers will be. So based on the customers, accordingly, you have to shape your product. Because usually what happens, they make a product and assume that people will buy it. But once they interact with the customers, then they know that, okay, the product is good or the tech is good, but they need to maybe do a bit of changes. We also assist them in their funding, their growth, and most important is in laying a good foundation. Because whatever is the culture that is set at the beginning is what is going to grow multifold as they grow. So that is where we get involved with the startups. And from our experience, from what we have seen, like post Navy, Navneet joined TDB. I worked in a few companies. I did a bit of consulting. I assisted a few startups. So, and quite a few of them sadly failed. They actually wound up. So I know the reasons why they wound up, whether it is excessive cash burn, whether it is not understanding where your tech is going to be. That so with these experiences, when we come, Navneet has seen, he has invested in companies from TDB and seen them grow or fail. So this gives us more of an insight at the early stage. That's why we decided that we'll come in at the early stage initially rather than come in at a later stage, because that's where the roots are seeds are sown and the roots hold on. After this, yes, whether it is any kind of access to the market, in our case, it is usually the defense market. We have got our experiences that we come with. He has been in acquisition, I have been in procurement, he has been in quality, and I've been in planning. So these kind of things. So we tell them how to go about it so that yes, their product can reach the end user, because it is the end user who has to actually use it. There's no point in putting up to the headquarters. So once they connect with the end users and they show their product, and if the end user likes it, then everyone else falls in place. So this is the kind of background and support that we give the startups. And yes, though we are in defense and deep tech aerospace, we get enough and more inquiries from people who are in other kinds of verticals, whether it's energy, whether it's climate, and the kind of work that they're doing is amazing. It's just sad that we don't have the bandwidth today to support them. But yes, going ahead, surely in the future, we would like to be part of their journey also. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we are questions as we are almost 50
Ravi,
minutes into this.
I just
Yes.
wanted to interject on one part which I missed out. Is basically what is Jamwant? Why Jamwant? Right? A lot of people in our age group may know who's Jamwant, but a lot in the younger generation may not. Actually, Jamwant was the what you can say, the commander in Sri Ram's army, and he is remembered for reminding Hanuman, who's the god of his powers, that he's the one, he has forgotten his powers, that he can cross the ocean on his own. Today, we feel the startups are the same who have to be reminded that what they are capable of and what they can do. So, our job as an investor, as Jamwant Ventures, is to remind them that they have what it takes to cross the oceans of difficulties, which is going to come in their way on the journey of the entrepreneurship.
What a beautiful way to describe. I think it's fantastic. Just cannot add anything to it. But coming to the next two segments of this as we're coming to the close in another few minutes. But just to India is often criticized. Many people have come back when we've done this over the last 4 years on X and said, "Do you think India can really make it to 35 trillion or 35 trillion plus by 2047?" If so, right? I mean, we have a fantastic book by Professor Krishnamurti, a dear friend. But what does India really have to be, really on the trajectory from between now today? We just have about 12 years, before we hit, 27 years. Am I getting it right? Yes. Is it, Shubham, where am I losing my thought? I think it's exactly, we are in 2025. So, about 22 years, right? So, close to 2 decades. So, what are the three important things, Professor Kugelman, that India must stay absolutely steadfast to make sure we are not pulled back? We did have a last decade that many people talk about from 2004 to 2013. So we don't want to go back to that boom. It came in, and then there was a complete lull moment. You saw from all data points, everything was going crashing. So how do we ensure that the next 2 decades are very much focused? There will be, as you said, you talked about de-dollarization. People talk about, the fluctuation of the rupee and devaluation rupee. We are moving towards a crypto, lots of skepticism there, but India is definitely proven by the digital stack that you can get more connected, you can be much more stronger when it comes to governance at a local level, especially financial governance and accountability. So, what are the 3 points, sir, from according to your perspective, that we must stay focused on as we move to the next 2 decades?
Yeah, thanks. And I think this is an important question because, we hear so much that, India is the fastest growing major economy in the world. That's according to the IMF and others. And yet, it's important not to take these things for granted. For me, when I look at India's growth story, one thing that to me sticks out as an issue and an evergreen challenge is the issue of youth unemployment. Now, the figures can be contested, but this is something that continues to be a challenge. And I think it was rightly noted by you or someone that India has been able to benefit from a demographic dividend more so than many of its neighboring countries have been able to do, and that's critical. But this is a country that will continue to have a large youth bulge for quite some time. I mean, the median age now is in the 20s and will continue to be for a bit of time. But there are these pressures, right? And so I think that to ensure this current momentum moving forward, my sense, and I say this as a non-economist, but I say this as someone who studied India for quite some time, I think it's critical to ensure that growth sectors that can truly uh, sectors that would be of most interest and relevance to young people. Where do young people want to work? What are the fields that young people want to work in? And this sort of gets into the higher education sector as well, ensuring that young people get the training they need for the types of jobs they want to get, so that they're marketable. So I think that's something to look at. And given some of the patterns in the region over the last few years, where you've had young people very unhappy about their lot, and that includes being unhappy about perception that jobs are oftentimes hard to come by. I think this is an important thing for India to focus on, not only for its economic growth, but also for the sake of stability as well. The second point I'll make, um, resource shortages, natural resource shortages, water insecurity, as climate change effects become more pronounced. I think this is going to pose a greater challenge for India, as it will for so many other countries that are affected significantly by climate change. And resource shortages can clearly have major impacts on the economy, and particularly the agricultural sector in India, which, as I understand it, continues to be a significant source of employment in the country. And obviously, agriculture is incredibly dependent on water for irrigation and other areas. So you asked me for 3 points, but I'll just stick with those in the interest of time.
Well, thank you very much. And we're getting more questions. And one, often India is regarded. There's been a strong criticism on lack of investment on R&D and innovation. Just over to you, Navneet, to really share that how India has changed over the last few years, and why R&D has become a priority and innovation has become a critical facet of a VC investment and startups. So if you could shed a light on that.
Yeah, actually, there is a lot of R&D which happens. It happens, but mostly it happens in the colleges, at the IITs, at the universities, and it is never commercialized. Like I have done my master's from IIT Kharagpur and in the material science, right? Today, material science is one of the what you can say subjects which is being actively pursued. We are looking for new materials, and there were a lot of labs which actually developed cutting edge what you can say research and products, but they never went into the market, right? Because there was lack of risk taking, there was lack of entrepreneur what you can say risk taking out there. But with the last 10-15 years, the way the ecosystem has boomed, especially in the tech sector now, with government setting up a 1 lakh crore R&D RDI fund, which is going to be 20,000 crores per year for the sustaining for the next 5 years, with the quantum mission coming in, there's a lot of focus which is there. And very heartening to see that I had gone for a college pitch session, and I asked this guy whose tech was not really amazing, but that the spirit was something which was amazing. I asked him, okay, so if today Google or Meta comes and offers you a job, what do you intend to do? He said, no, I'll do my own startup. And that is something which is heartening, because the risk taking has changed. We were guys, we were very happy getting a job, finishing our life like that. But today, when you see a youngster, they are looking to create something, and R&D is happening. Only thing is, now people probably are looking for more patents than writing papers, because earlier we used to write some amazing papers but do nothing after that, right? Today, even the universities and the colleges, they are focusing on actually transitional research, which can be transited to something which has a commercial value, which has a product, and that has changed. And probably that is the revolution which we are going to see in the coming years, because everybody today understands the value of creating something on your own. And secondly, what is also coming to India is that you don't have to always play catch up, right? You don't have to play the markets which are probably that what again the sectors which are hot or trending in the West, which may not be so useful to you. You have to first look at inwardly what works for you, where you can make the money, where can you commercialize, and of course your quality has to be at the global standard, because if you make something globally at a global standard, your prices are definitely going to be much better, right? It's much cheaper than whatever you can develop outside. So for me, I think R&D is taking a lot of focus from the government and individuals. And as far as like Michael brought out the right point, that employability part is also changing, because when these guys start their startups, and some of them are bound to fail, right? I won't say some, there lots of them are bound to fail, but what you learn is a practical experience of life, that is intrinsic value, that changes your psyche, that changes you, the way you think, that changes the way you're going to pick up a job. When you pick up a job now, you understand what is the skill set that is required to make it in the bigger league.
Absolutely. I think one absolutely very well said. But one question which just come on X, I was checking, is it's a male panel, like it's a panel, and you both have another co-founder, who's another amazing woman leader, and three of us are connected by another brilliant, woman entrepreneur. So, Commander Karthik, if you could really speak about why is it important that women's leadership and women must play a critical role in the India story, because often people will say that, where are the women entrepreneurs? And we know amazing ones. So, and we will hopefully do, Michael, just on your note about the water crisis, on next 15th October, a session will be actually on air water generation and why it's an emerging opportunity for India. And and I do have a specific question to you on sustainability. But Commander Karthik, coming to you, sir, how do we really make sure that women are part, as you have very clearly created a VC fund with a woman leader? If you could shed some light on that. You're on mute, sir.
Yeah, it would have been great if Jyotsna could have also joined us, but she's doing she's doing her MBA, part-time MBA, so she has got a classes every day evening from 6 to 9. So whether we like or not, she winds up early. So she could not join us. But yes, hopefully next year onward, she'll join us. She'll finish next June, then she'll join us. Yes, women are there. And believe you me, the whatever events that we attend, whether it is Startup Mahakumbh or anything, I have seen that it is women are there and they are at the forefront. Though they have got male partner founders with them, but yes, they are at the forefront. They know their tech and they are very good at it. The times have changed. Today, if there are 100 startups, I'm sure 90% of them have 100% got a woman co-founder. And they are at the forefront, and there's some misconception, but from time immemorial, I think the women in India have been doing very well. I don't know why this feeling is there. In our case, she could not attend, but yes, they are there. For example, Aero Nero, there's another company, there's a young girl. She is making a hybrid drone which can be underwater as well as fly with the endurance of 4 5 hours. And amazing girl, she's just 22, 23 years old. So I can keep giving a list of people, but yes, maybe they are shy to come on screen. I don't know what, but you attend any of these events, they are there.
Absolutely. Absolutely, very well said. I will not let go of Professor Michael Kugelman with one important question. So, something which is very dear to you and me is the India's green growth story. I think unlike many other leaders, it's something which Prime Minister Modi has said very clearly that year 2047 cannot be achieved if we are not vetted in the values of ensuring sustainability is part and parcel of the delivery. India has been very strong in terms of sustainable development goals in terms of ensuring that the energy, and that's what I was coming to really, because to drive all this is going to be that strong energy need. You did talk about green hydrogen, why it's important, and maybe touch upon green hydrogen and IMEC. So I would really like you to just draw the canvas and talk about what are those important strokes, because this will not be achieved. If because we China did its growth had a very strong dependence on coal and gas, and eventually moved into a stronger green energy sourcing. So, if you could really shed some light on how India is kind of balancing that and also strategizing that particular need, because we have another 20 years to go.
Yeah, thanks. Really important question. As we all know, Prime Minister Modi himself announced the National Green Hydrogen Mission. So that shows just how much of a priority this is for the Indian government. If the Prime Minister has taken ownership over this very ambitious plan to become a green hydrogen producer, and he launched that national mission, I believe, 2 or 3 years ago. So not too long ago, but India has made significant amounts of progress. For me, it reflects a goal on the part of India to diversify its fledgling renewable energy mix. I mean, we know that there's been some progress on the solar and wind front. I do think that you have these consistent challenges, particularly cost issues, that have really made it difficult to bring these areas out to scale. I think that there are some very specific niche areas that investors, including foreign investors, could try to address when it comes to some of these challenges, particularly the issue of storage for solar power, battery storage, that type of thing. There's been a lot of progress in that regard, but I think that there is a role that investors can play in trying to strengthen that capacity. But with green hydrogen, I think that certainly the cost issue is there, and also when it comes to issues like land availability, this is also something that will need to be worked out for these large scale projects. But go back to what I said before. I mean, that the Indian state itself has been, providing this demonstration effect, so to speak. It's been setting a good example by having its own companies, its own oil and gas companies, pledge to use more green
Yeah.
hydrogen. Though my understanding is that there has been some resistance from the private sector more broadly, and that certainly is something to address. I think that the only other point I would make here is that the government does face a bit of an awkward challenge in the sense that coal continues to be a really big part of India's energy mix, and it's a major contributor to the economy, and there's no plans to change that. So how do you balance that continued reliance on domestically produced coal as well as continued reliance on hydrocarbons from the Middle East and Russia and elsewhere, while at the same time trying to grow out the renewable energy field? Natural gas, LNG, as I understand it, has been a bridge fuel, particularly for transport in cities. But where do you go from there? So striking that proper balance between the dirty fuels, legacy dirty fuels, as well as new renewables, as the government has really pledged on a very high level to prioritize that, that's going to be a bit of a policy challenge as well.
Absolutely. I think with that critical note, I just want to just clarify people that we are recording this, and right after this is over, the full recording will be available on LinkedIn and YouTube. And on X, we will share all the details. And this will be shared extensively in the next coming weeks across the board. I think we are headed towards we have lots of questions, and I'm just aware that we stick to about an hour. But I'll let Shubham do the conclusion and just say a few words of word of thanks. And we will stay on to take a picture, including with our, super volunteer helping us behind the scenes. But over to you, Shubham.
Yes, thank you. I mean, just before that, do you want me to sort of, take the questions first and then we do the concluding remarks, or how do you want to take this forward? Because we really have some
I
really
think that really
interesting
depends
topics.
on how much time we have because we had asked for 60 minutes to 80 minutes. I just want to see if any of you want to stay for another 10 minutes because we have a few questions that we can raise.
Yeah. All right. So let me just pick few questions. I think this one would be, for CDR Navneet ji, Commander Navneet ji. A very interesting question from, just give me a second. Yeah. So can you please guide how should investors factor in rupee depreciation risk while valuing Indian startups that earn in INR but raise in USD?
No, absolutely good question, but my answer is very simple on this. One, when an Indian startup it may be raising in US dollars, but it is raising still a very small amount, a small fraction of the money for the similar kind of startup which will be raising in US, right? Second part, it's a uncertain scenario. The rupee and the dollar equation will keep changing, and that is difficult to factor. But that's the risk which investors do take.
Great. Uh, another question
So
that I have. Sorry.
sorry, can I ask from a policy perspective, Michael, you talked about SEO currency and bring currency. What do you think is really the future? Are we looking at some kind of equal
Ravi, we are losing you. There's a bandwidth issue, I guess. Let me ask you a question that I have for you, Professor. Uh, you know, Given the futuristic developments, if you had to identify one big risk and one big opportunity in India-US relations over the next decade, what would they be?
Thanks. Yeah, that's a tough one, especially given how things have developed in recent months. But if we're looking at a broader long-term scale, um, I think the big risk is that the China factor could change the nature of the relationship. I'd said before that both India and the U.S. in different ways are signaling a desire to ease tensions with China. I don't think either the U.S. or India will stop seeing China as a competitor anytime soon, particularly India. But I think that there might need to be a rethink of how the strategic partnership should be defined, and particularly if we have lasting damage to some of the parallel tracks of the relationship because of what's happened in recent months. So I think that's one risk. In terms of the opportunity, I just go back to what I've already been referencing a lot is clean energy. There's just so much scope, and you have so many here in the U.S. You have so many entrepreneurs who are really keen to focus on renewables, and many of them are already operating in India and elsewhere. I think that could be. I mean, assuming that policy priorities in India don't change, which I don't think they will. I mean, moving forward, even if years down the road you have a different party leading the government in India, I don't see any desire to scale down those goals of ramping up clean energy. So I think that's really a great opportunity. I'd said before that energy cooperation on the whole has been a big part of the recent U.S.-India partnership. The year before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, India was actually the top destination for American oil exports, which is really interesting. And obviously, things changed after the Russian invasion. But there's a legacy there that I think could be tapped into. Very briefly, I think the question that Ravi was trying to ask is, what could we perhaps see, on this issue of SEO and BRICS trying to come up with mechanisms to counter the dollar? For there, I think the key signpost is how much level of risk are the BRICS and SCO states willing to take when it comes to reducing their own reliance on the dollar? Because all of these members of BRICS and SCO, including China, Russia, they depend on the dollar to an extent. And that's one of the big reasons why they haven't been willing to push forward with the BRICS Bank or anything like that. But will that calculus change? That, I think, could impact in a big way how far these folks go with those efforts.
I think great.
I
I
don't know
think,
if
yeah.
Commander Navneet or I was saying I don't know if Commander Navneet or Commander Kartik want to come into this question.
No, I'm fine. I think
Okay, okay. Shubham, any more questions?
yeah, because the kind
One,
of
yeah,
uncertainty which is there right now, it's going to be very difficult to predict which side the dollar or this thing is going to go.
right.
And with the current realignments which are happening all across, like China, Russia, India, then US, all these relationships are in a currently in a fluid state. We don't know how it's going to play out in the future. So I think yes, the uncertainty is going to stay, but just because life is uncertain doesn't mean it has to go against you. It can also go for you.
Great. Just one last question for the panelist. With India having world's largest young population, how can policy and industry collaborate? How policy and industry collaborate to turn this demographic dividend into true innovation dividend? Maybe Navneet, if you want to answer, or
Yeah.
maybe Professor, you want to answer.
It's a tough one, but yes, because there's a young population, there's a push which is coming from the government side, both in terms of Skill India. There's a different program coming. There's a new education policy which is coming, which is already in play. There's a money which is coming for R&D and innovation. There are different kind of loans which are available in the government. So yes, the government is trying to push in whatever way they can, and yet with the new startup ecosystem is the what you can say the fuel which is going to take this engine forward. And skill set, yes, it has to be developed. And industry with the new policy, also the basically the internships which are happening in the industry, which is compulsory now. And a lot of industries have come forward, the companies have come forward, rather we also take interns, and that is what is going to skill the new generation and make them more employable.
Great. Professor, if you want to add a few.
Yeah, thanks. I agree with that. I would just add that youth entrepreneurs need to be empowered. They need to have the agency to engineer the types of investments they want to. So absolutely, it's important to ensure that young people get the training they need and all the tools and resources they need. But I think that you need to go beyond that as well. It's not just about those that are still in school, but those that are looking to invest, and they need to feel that they have the agency to do what they want to do. Going back to some of the examples I referenced in other countries, you have a lot of young people that feel frustrated that when they have good ideas, they're not able to take them forward. And I think one could relate that to India and to the goals and dreams, so to speak, of young entrepreneurs. So equipping them with the tools to be successful, that's going to be important as well.
Great. So over to
I
you.
would just like to add to this, Shubham.
Yeah.
We need to inculcate a thought process that to fail is okay. That is one major issue with our generation, previous generation, and the future that we are bringing up. We should tell them that to fail is okay. You can do something else, or you can redo it. You can succeed in it. Like the classic example of Mr. Bose, who made the Bose speakers. He worked on it for 18 years with successive failures. And finally, we have got the Bose speakers and the Bose headphones. So fail is okay.
Great. I think thank you everyone for the comments and giving us all the founders who are going to visit this dialogue again, and they'll definitely have a good message out of this. I think as we come to end of this conversation, India is the fastest growing major economy. I mean, it's nothing that any comments anywhere made would affect the situation so far. Uh, Given all the geopolitics that's happening, all the changes that are happening, still India is performing at a really good rate on their growth story. I think together India and US accounts for nearly quarter of the world's GDP. That aligned in that just not influences the markets, but also, it brings the best of the solutions out of global challenges, like in the climate change, the health, and the technology. I think for the young entrepreneurs like myself, all this India US relationship, as well as India growth story, it's not only about the policies and the trade figures. It's more about the real opportunities. I think with that, I would leave floor to Ravi, and for the concluding remarks from his side. And I think, did he just drop out of the? Okay. Oh, oh, I think he's facing some issues. Oh, are you there, Ravi? Yeah. So over to you, Ravi, and
Yes, I
thank
think
you everyone for
with
joining the
that note, I
conversation.
would just probably say thank you.
No, I think we are having technical issues with Ravi's internet. So I think, on behalf of Invest Forum NYC and Startopreneur, I would like to thank Kartik sir, Professor Michael, Navneet ji, for joining this conversation, and sharing your experiences, as well as inputs with the community, as well as the listener across India, as well as people will be hearing it. Thank you for joining the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Shubham. Thank you, Ravi. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you
Pleasure
very much.
connecting.
Thank you so much for working behind
Thank
the
you,
scenes.
everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Great
you.
conversation.
Thank you.